Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got 10 more new infinite or instant win combos with Edge of Eternities. Now these are combos that are legal in standard, they're legal in modern, in older formats, commander, and some of them are more competitive than others. I'll try to evaluate them and let you know how competitive I think they are. But most of them are pretty fun, and all of them will just win the game instantly or will go off and create some sort of infinite combo. So pretty fun to think about these. Let's jump into our first combo, which uses a devastating onslaught card. This is double X and red sorcery to create X tokens that are copies of target artifact or creature you control. Those tokens gain haste until end of turn, and then you sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. So essentially, if you pay 3 mana, then you can make 1 copy of a creature or an artifact. If you pay 5 mana, then you can make 2 copies, 7 mana, 3 copies, etc., etc. You can see how this kind of scales up. And if you have enough mana, you can create sort of a lethal board pretty easily because they all have haste. However, there's several cards in standard right now that if you play them out and then you just make 2 copies of them, that creates a lethal board state right there. So kind of interesting. Even in limited, the Exalted Sunborn in the same set here. I mean, both of these, are rare mythics. So not sure if you'll be able to get those in the draft, but potentially you could. So if you have an Exalted Sunborn out and you make 2 copies of it, it's going to double that. So then you're going to get 4 copies of it, plus the original one. All 4 will have haste, and you can swing for exactly, 20, right? Because there'll be 5 copies of it, and each of them has 4 power. Gain a lot of life, even if your opponent is at a higher life total. Swing for 20, so that'll probably end the game right away. The Twin Flame Tyrant also. So the thing about the Twin Flame Tyrant is that it says if a source would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage. But if you have multiple copies of it out, then it actually doubles and then doubles again. So let's say you have 2 copies of it, then the first one does 6, right? And then the second one will actually do 12 each. So you only need to essentially copy it twice here to do a ton of damage to your opponent with the Twin Flame Tyrant. I'm not going to do the math in my head right now. I'm not really sure. You can let me know in the comments below how much damage it actually is with Twin Flame Tyrant if you make 2 copies of it. But it doubles. So each one would be essentially 20. I don't know, a lethal attack, 24, something like that. And then the same thing with Bloodletter of Aclazod's, which doubles the amount of damage. If you have multiple copies of those out, each one will do that much, but double, essentially. So each one would do 8 times 2. Each one would do 16. So just 2 of them would have to get through to win with Bloodletter. So that's pretty sweet. So this card can do a ton of crazy stuff, and is decently powerful for just 1 card for 5 mana. Let me know in the comments below if there's any other creatures or even artifacts that if you copy them multiple times just instantly win you the game that you can think of. I'm sure there are quite a few, even in older formats, that could be pretty powerful, this card. But this card has a ton of combo potential, and can instantly win you the game in many different ways. So let's go on to the Osteoharmonist. I don't know how to pronounce this first name. 3 mana for a legendary human wizard, 2/3, and you tap to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's a skeleton. In addition to its other types, has no abilities, and activate only as a sorcery. So this is a cool card. You can use it for kind of like Death Shadow stuff. I was thinking, I posted that on my Twitter. That was sort of an interesting combo that you could use to get back things that have negative effect. But you can also go infinite with this, with Intruder Alarm in Modern here. If you have any creature in your graveyard, and then you tap it to return it, and you have an Intruder Alarm out, it will say whenever a creature comes into play, you get to untap all creatures. So then you get to untap this, and then if you have a way to sacrifice that creature for value, like the Altar of Dementia, you can mill your opponent and just go infinite mill with Altar of Dementia with these cards out if you have this, because it doesn't come into play with like a finality counter like a lot of those cards say, or like exile it and make a token or something like that. It just brings the creature back from the graveyard to play, and then if you sacrifice it, it goes back to the graveyard, tap it again, bring it back into play, sacrifice it, Intruder Alarm, untaps it, and then rinse and repeat and go infinite from here. So seems like an interesting card. Could be powerful in different contexts. Could go infinite as well. But yeah, let me know if there's any other combos with this guy you can think of as well. Okay, let's go to our third combo here, the Mightform Harmonizer. This, again, I think is a pretty powerful card. 4 mana for 4/4, but it has Warp for 3. And then whenever a land you control enters, double the power of target creature you control. So if you can warp this in on turn 4, so you have 3 mana out, you warp this in, and then your next land is, say, a Fable Passage or really any other fetch land in standard or other formats that have fetch lands that can trigger the landfall twice, you can kind of double your creature's power. So you can 4 times it, whatever it is. So if you had, say, the Rot Curse Rakshasa out, you can give it 20 damage with trample right away. So you could play the Rot Curse Rakshasa on turn 2 or turn 3, and then turn 4, warp this in, Fable Passage, double the power, and then attack for 20. So seems pretty good. It seems like this card has a lot of potential to do some wacky stuff in standard, maybe even older formats with fetch lands, because doubling power is certainly pretty powerful. All right, let's move on to our next combo. Using the space-time anomaly, this is a 4 mana blue and white sorcery. It says target player mills cards equal to your life total. Very simple, elegant card, but pretty powerful. Can potentially just mill your opponent out if you're at a very high life total. But what I was thinking with this card, instead of just trying to like gain up to like 40 or 50 life yourself, is just use something that copies it, such as the Curse Recording, or there's some other cards in standard and other formats that can just copy an instant or sorcery. The Cursed Recording is kind of nice because you can kind of like curve this into it, and maybe even use it for other, copy other spells as well. But if you say got up to 24 life, which is basically all you would need, then if you copy it, it'll mill 48 cards, which is probably enough to mill out your opponent. So you start with 60 cards, you draw 7 of them in your opening, so you have 53, and then by turn 5, you have 48 cards, essentially. And this could be a turn 5 win if you do it this way. And so you just need to gain essentially 4 life to get up to 24 and like maintain your life total. Just play a deck with a bunch of removal or other life gain to boost your life total as much as you can. But you don't have to get it up to a ridiculous amount. You can just get up to 24, 25 life. Should be fine. The battle menu here is kind of like my example of a card that can gain you 4 life. It could also be used as removal or a creature. But if you get up to 24 life, that's probably enough if you just copy the space time anomaly. So that's my thoughts on how you could potentially just kind of one-shot people with this. It could be somewhat competitive. I don't know. We'll see. I guess it may depend on how like aggressive the format is. If they're like a super aggressive decks, they're getting your life total really low really quickly, then maybe this isn't so good. But it could be a decent win condition in some decks as well. Okay, let's move on to the Loading Zone, which is a 4 mana enchantment. And it says if one or more counters will be put on a creature, spacecraft, or planet you control, twice that many of those kinds of counters are put on it instead. And it has Warp for just 1 mana. So this is a pretty powerful effect that you're getting for potentially just 1 mana. And, so it's very cheap. You could play it for 4 mana as well. It's sort of another Dawn-Sire combo card, I would say, potentially. And this is sort of a 3-card combo with the Dawn-Sire. There's other ways to get counters, obviously, on the Dawn-Sire. And this, if you just have enough, 10 power worth of creatures out, which isn't too impossible. There's some decently high power creatures in standard right now that are cheap that you could use this with as well. But Systems Override is pretty simple way to just put 10 counters right away on the Dawn-Sire. So if you play out the Dawn-Sire on turn 5, then the next turn you could just go warp this thing in, Systems Override, gets up to 20, attack for 20 in the air. If they have a blocker back, you could even destroy it, do 100 damage. I talked about a shoot your own creature screaming nemesis combo as well, so you could try that, play that as well if you want to do 100 damage. But just on its own, the Dawn-Sire attacks for 20. So I thought just getting it up to 20 counters actually isn't too hard with a combination of these 2 cards. So could be something to consider for, I don't know, commander, but also standard or just kitchen table fun. So seems like an interesting combo. And loading zone is definitely a way to get these big spacecraft up to 20 plus counters. Okay, let's go to our next combo here. This is an interesting one. I posted this to my Twitter as well. I believe this works. Tell me in the comments if it doesn't, but I'm pretty sure this is a very odd combo, but it creates infinite life loss and card draw for your opponent. Mostly because this card, Requiem Monolith, is a very odd card. Not a card we've really seen before. Um, with this effect to like give your opponent's creatures this ability. So, anyways, I'll read it. It's 3 mana for an artifact. You can tap it. It says until end of turn, target creature gains. Whenever this creature is dealt damage, you draw that many cards and lose that much life. That creature's controller may have this artifact deal 1 damage to it. Activate only as a sorcery. So on the surface level, you can like ping your own creature and draw a card, which is kind of nice just to have that effect. But you can also target your opponent's creatures and give your opponent's creatures the ability which says whenever this creature is dealt damage, you draw that many cards and lose that much life. So this is kind of confusingly worded, I would say. When I first read this card, I thought it was like you would draw the cards when your opponent's creature is dealt damage. But from what I've heard, it's actually your opponent will be the one who draws the cards and loses a life when they're dealt damage. Now, this kind of goes infinite with Orcish Bowmasters. Orcish Bowmasters is pretty popular card, pretty powerful card in Modern. It says when it enters the battlefield and whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, it deals 1 damage to any target, and then you amass Orcs 1. So it triggers off of your opponent's drawing cards to do an additional damage. So you can kind of see how those two abilities are like mirrors of each other, which create this infinite kind of combo. However, if you target one of your opponent's creatures, then you play the Bowmasters. It will do a damage to it. They'll lose a life, draw a card. It'll trigger the Bowmasters. You can do another damage to it. They'll lose a life, draw a card, trigger the Bowmasters, do another damage to it. However, they will run out because the creature will die eventually, depending on how much toughness the creature has. However, if you give their creature indestructible, I believe this works that you can just keep pinging it over and over again. So if something like the revitalizing repast, you can target your opponent's creatures and give it indestructible. It could also be used as a land, so maybe that's kind of like the easiest way to kind of have that effect in your deck. Um, so if you played this on 3 and then turn 4, you go revitalizing repast your creature, target it with the Requiem monolith, and then play Bowmasters. You just deal infinite damage to your opponent, and they draw infinite cards, as long as they can't interrupt this combo. But I don't know. That's pretty funny, I would say, and kind of goes infinite. So I don't know. Would this actually be competitive in modern? Probably not, but could be something definitely funny to pull off, or maybe in the commander deck. This could be something you could try. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know about this one in the comments below. All right, so let's go to our next combo. This is Singularity Rupture. So another kind of mill combo here. They kind of are pushing. It feels like they're pushing mill in standard. I don't know why. Let me know. You think that they're trying to make mill viable? It's 6 mana, blue and black sorcery. Destroy all creatures, and then any number of target players each mill half their library rounded down. So you could mill yourself if you needed to, but milling your opponent for half their library is pretty good if you're playing a mill deck, and being able to sweep the board at the same time is pretty good. So this does go, mills your opponent's entire deck if you have a River Churn Monument out and enough mana for the exhaust ability. Now the exhaust ability is 4 mana. Any number of target players each mills cards equal to the number of cards in the graveyard. So if you mill half their library essentially, and then you uh, mill that much more, basically doubles up the amount of mill that you already did, because they'll have that many cards in their graveyard. It could be even more if they have other cards in their graveyard from earlier in their game. So this will certainly kind of end the game. But what I like about this combo, I think, which there are like I think a couple other cards in standard that mill like half your opponent's deck, but this one is also sweeps the board, so it kind of gives you the time to activate this exhaust ability or draw into it. The River Churn Monument. So if you had it already, you just play it out, and then turn 6, you sweep the board with this, mill your half your opponent's deck. Then it kind of gives you the time to so you don't just die the next turn. Because that's kind of the problem with some of the mill decks is you like mill them out a bunch and then you just die. But this kind of you mill them out a bunch and then you don't die because you swept the board. So potentially you don't die, but um, so it could be some sort of 1-2 kind of combo here. I don't know. Let me know if this you think is at all competitively viable. Maybe it's just more for fun, but certainly does work as a 1-2 kind of uh, punch. Of course, if you have 10 mana, you can do this and the exhaust ability in the same turn and win basically right away. But the fact that you can this kind of gives you an extra turn to untap and do that exhaust ability is kind of nice. Okay, let's go to Moonlit Meditation. This card is wacky and has a lot of interesting, weird combos you could probably pull off with it. Let me know if there's any other ones you can think of in the comments below. I'm sure there's lots that I'm not considering quite yet, but there's definitely some interesting cards interesting combos you can do with this that you could think of. I'm sure this is one of the ones that I thought of that does end the game right away, which uses the Terror of the Peaks. So Moonlight Meditation, let's just read it first. 3 mana for an or enchant artifact or creature you control. And then the first time you would create one or more tokens each turn, you instead create that many tokens that are copies of enchanted permanent. Interesting. So, so you can make a lot of copies of a single creature or artifact. Um, and for example, Terror of the Peaks, when additional copies of it come into play, they all kind of trigger each other, I believe, and they kind of see each other and deal that much damage to any target. So your opponent's face. If you if you put the Moonlit Meditation on the Terror of the Peaks, and then you played, say, Hop to it to create 3 tokens, or any other card that just makes tokens. Um, would create 3 Terror of the Peaks, and then all of them would trigger, see each other, and you deal what is it, 40 damage or something? I'm not really sure exactly. What would be the math? Maybe it's more than that. I'm not sure. It would be a lethal combo here, but there's lots of other cards that make tokens, in standard that you could play pretty easily. So um, maybe this card has some competitive potential. It seems kind of janky to me, like you really have to set it up, but it certainly can instantly win you the game if you get the right setup. So the power level is there. Again, let me know if there's any other targets you can think of that would be pretty good with this. Um, but yeah, I'll probably try to be brewing around this card on my channel for sure. So look for that video coming up. All right. And then we've got so this one is a modern combo here, the Bioengineered Future, which is 3 mana enchantment, green enchantment. And when it enters, you create a lander token. So those are artifacts that you can tap to basically ramp your growth, search your library for a land, put it a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. But mostly using this ability for the second part, which says each creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it each land that entered the battlefield under your control. So this goes infinite with persist cards, and such as the Kitchen Finks, which kind of matches this color. So you could play this in sort of a mono green deck, or even a mono green commander deck, something like that. Um, when Kitchen Finks enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. It has persist, which says when it dies, if it had no +1 or -1/-1 counters, you return to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter. However, if you played a land with having the bioengineered future out, it'll come into play with the +1/+1 counter, which counters out the -1/-1 counter, and it just comes back regularly. So you can infinitely sacrifice the Kitchen Finks over and over and over again. It will persist and kind of come back as itself infinite times. And then if you have some payoff, again, like the Altar of Dementia, you can just mill your opponent out. If you have any other sacrifice outlets, you can just use those to infinitely, um, you know, do whatever the effect of that sacrifice outlet is over and over and over again. So maybe some competitive potential. I'm not sure. There's other effects that already do this in modern, but this is another one that you have access to that kind of gives you some additional bonus of having a lander token, and also maybe some bonuses for just like playing a beatdown sort of strategy, making all of your creatures bigger as well with its second ability. I don't know. So we'll see. Legal and modern again, and older formats. Okay, and then let's see. Our last one here is pretty interesting. I think this one is legal on Arena too. I believe all these cards are Arena legal and modern legal. So we got the Syr Vondam, which is 2 mana, a white and a black mana for a legendary creature, Human Knight. It's got Vigilance, Menace, and whenever another creature you control dies or is put into exile, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and you gain 1 life, and it's a 2/2. And then the other ability it has when it dies or is put into exile, while its power is 4 or greater, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. This card is pretty powerful. It's got a lot of abilities on it and seems pretty strong in constructed. In standard, I could see this seeing play, maybe even back to modern with this combo. Maybe it's a pretty good commander as well, which can work as part of your combo here with the animation module and the Warren Soul Trader. So if you're not familiar, there's quite a few animation module infinite combos, but this is another one, and this card is probably the best card I could think of, like just on its own rate that goes infinite with animation module. So maybe just if you have a combo where the pieces themselves are quite good on their own, or with other pieces in the deck, then that's kind of the ideal of having a combo deck that can do well on its own. But if you draw the combo, you just go infinite and win. So basically, this creates infinite counters on Syr Vondam. Infinite enters the battlefield. Um, Triggers infinite leave the battlefield triggers. So if you have like a blood artist out, this will do infinite damage, but also makes this an infinite creature. So that's pretty powerful because it has menace. So if they don't have 2 blockers back, this will just attack for lethal potentially. So animation module. Let me talk about the combo. It's 1 mana. Whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are placed on a permanent you control, you can pay 1 mana, and if you do, you create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. Not using it for the next ability, but just for that ability there. And then the Soul Trader here says you pay 1 life and you sacrifice another creature to create a treasure token. So you need to kind of have something either die or be put into exile, or just a +1/+1 counter being placed on something to start off this combo. But let's say one of your other creatures dies or is exiled, or warped. You could even warp a creature or something like that to put into exile. Then what this does is it triggers the Syr Vondam's ability to put a +1/+1 counter on it. You gain a life, right? And because the +1/+1 counter is on there, it triggers animation module. So you can pay 1 mana to make a servo. So if you do that, you can make the servo, and then with the Warren Soul Trader, you can sacrifice the servo, um, to get a treasure token, and you pay a life. The life is then mitigated by the life that you gained from Syr Vondam, which is kind of nice here. So you're not actually losing any life as you keep going through this combo, right? But if you had anything that gains you life when a creature comes into play, you could go like infinite life as well with this combo. So anyway, so that triggers the sacrificing the trigger will then trigger the Syr Vondam again to put a +1/+1 counter on it, gain a life. That then triggers the animation module to make a servo, and then you use the treasure for the 1 mana, and then you get a servo, sacrifice the servo, get the treasure, that triggers the Syr Vondam. So you can see this goes in an infinite loop to create infinite counters on Syr Vondam. Infinite enter the battlefield triggers, infinite leave the battlefield triggers, and potentially just win the game right away. So all these cards are, again, decent on their own. So maybe this sort of is just you slam these all into one deck and build around it, some sort of aristocrat style deck, and also has an infinite combo in it. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if you think this is viable at all. Maybe just more for fun, or you could use this as your commander and play this combo in it as well. So that is 10 new infinite combos. Let me know what you think about them. Any others that I missed? Any other combos you're brewing with Edge of Eternities? This is a pretty cool set. It's got a lot of pretty exciting cards in it. I would say a lot of cool combo cards in it. Um, I may do a top 10 combo cards video for this set. Let me know if you want to see that as well before the set drops on Arena. And then, of course, we will have gameplay and all the cool standard decks and combos that I can think of or that you guys help me think of. So I really appreciate all the support for the channel and any ideas and comments. I love to kind of discuss these combos if you have any cool ideas. Sometimes my viewers come up with ideas and I make them into a deck, and that's kind of what I show on the channel. So, um, yeah, I appreciate it. And even if I don't make your idea into a deck, sometimes they just inspire me in other ways too to think of something else. So they all are appreciated, and yeah, really appreciate all the support for the channel. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.